2 Timothy 4 and verse 5. There's a lot in that verse, and we're going to walk our way through it. We started with the very first. So let me read the whole thing. But you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. Keep your head in all situations. Not easy. Maybe one of the most challenging things of all. It's not right for me to re-plow the ground I've already done, but to just say keeping your head in all situations is not possible for immature people. One of the marks of maturity, in fact, is being able to keep your head in all situations. I remember the very first time back when I was at Highland Park Christian Church in Tulsa, and B.A. Austin had come to be our senior pastor, senior minister. And we were in an elders meeting, and he made a proposal, and 3 or 4 of the guys on the elder board said they didn't think that was going to work. Now, I had, in my past ministry experience, if that had transpired, the senior guy would have pushed back really hard and said all kinds of things, including perhaps, how do you know? And I am the pro here, or they wouldn't use those terms, but they would imply strongly, you're just a volunteer, on and on it could have gone. But BA just said, oh, okay, we'll try something else. And I thought, what just happened here? I thought those were fighting words in a lot of churches when the senior guy gets crossed. Not with BA. And that was typical of the way he led. There were things that when he made the proposal, and if they were that important to him, he would push back, but he never pushed back in an angry way that I ever saw. That's a man who kept his head. Now, I was around BA and with BA a ton in the 9 years that he was the senior minister at Highland Park. I never saw him lose his head. And here is one of the biggest things I'll say about BA. He was a WYSIWYG man. Now, if you didn't work with DOS computers when the transition happened and we moved, actually our computers ran DOS, but we moved into a Windows environment, which was at first kind of an imitation of an Apple environment. But anyway, the term was WYSIWYG. And what it meant was what you saw on your screen is what would come out on the page. And the WYSIWYG stood for what you see is what you get. He was just real. I find that mature and gentle and thoughtful people in leadership create an environment where people can grow and develop. And in a church where people, they love the church. They love the environment. They love what goes on there, and they're committed to it. Those were 9 great years. I would often say, I feel like I got a master's degree equivalent working with B.A. Austin. And at the top of the list of what mattered most to me in those years was he kept his head in all situations. I've not been able to emulate him as well as I wish, but I've just got to say his example was so good and so helpful to me as a young man in ministry. Keep your head in all situations. endure hardship. Now, here is there's two big things I want to say about that. First of all, since Paul said endure hardship, the implication is pretty clear. You're going to experience hardship. This is a hard thing for nearly all of us. I do not go looking for hardship. I don't have to. It comes my way. And hardship comes in so many different forms. There is physical hardship. And in ministry, there are times when it's physically hard. In my youth ministry days, summer was physically hard. I'd have usually 6 weeks of church camp, 1 week of Christ in Youth Conference, one youth group trip to either Six Flags in Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, or Worlds of Fun in Kansas City. My days were long, and just, it was hard. And by the time I'd hoped I would get to age 40 before I moved out of youth ministry, because for me, a 40-year-old youth minister, there was something that just had a great ring to it, but I couldn't make it. I transitioned in my 39th year. I couldn't keep up anymore. That is so tiny. That is not at all what Paul's talking about in hardship. Listen, there are preachers and their families all across the globe whose lives are just barely above the poverty line, and a lot of times not above the poverty line. And if you look at the entire globe, there are ministers and their families who scratch and scrape by for the barest necessities. That, folks, is hardship. You and I don't even know what hardship is. 6 weeks of camp and a trip out of town with those kids. How horrible. What a hardship. No. It's just hard sometimes, but that's not a hardship. Okay. I feel like in a similar way as we don't know about persecution, we really don't know about hardship. We are insulated from it. And so are we bad because we're insulated from it? No, I don't think we are. But I think it seems like a poor stewardship of our lives to be both unaware and unconcerned about those who are under real hardship. Okay. The first thing then is if you're going to be in ministry, Timothy, you are going to experience hardship. Some of it will be physical. Much more of it will be emotional. And on that side, I can relate to what Paul says to Timothy. Here's the second thing. You endure hardship. I'm wired that I can endure a lot. My problem is I rarely endure it without complaint. And when it comes to hardship, unless I'm being sarcastic, which, believe it or not, I can be, I don't rejoice in hardship. When I experience hardship, I don't get happy. I have several friends. Gosh, I've got quite a few friends, but these very few friends I'm talking about, they rejoice in hardship. I admire them. And if I could figure out how to reshape my personality, temperament, and nature, I would love to be able to. I would love to, on a normal basis, rejoice in hardship. Paul doesn't tell Timothy to rejoice in hardship. He says endure hardship. And I think there are times when every Christian, every minister needs to be urged, endure hardship. What's the point of enduring anything? Getting through it. That's what I think Paul is saying to Timothy. Timothy, endure hardship. Get through it. If you quit, that is not enduring hardship. That's giving in to hardship. When I endure hardship, I don't give in to it. I persevere through it. I bear up under the stress and the weight of the hardship. Oh, man. There are so many pieces of this that I'd like to talk more about, but a lot of it doesn't even matter to people other than myself. One of the things, though, that I think does matter is to endure hardship. First of all, it implies hardship is coming. Second, it implies you finish. You don't give up. You don't give in, but you finish. How do I know when I'm finished? Well, first of all, I don't think you're going to get a email from God or a Twitter or some kind of a voice saying, okay, you're done. I don't think so. In the biggest sense, I don't want to be done living until I'm dead. And I don't mean existing. I mean really living. I don't want to be a person who just, I get old and I'm getting old and on a slide for home, I'm going to just let the world pass me right by. I want to stay engaged. I want to endure all the way until the actual end of my life occurs. I don't know if I'm going to get to. There's a real possibility that my life, I don't get to write a script for the end of my life. God does that. I learned this firsthand on January 10th of 2011, and so I can speak with some authority on the subject. So keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist. I connect with Timothy on lots of different levels. I easily recall when I was young in ministry. And so that's one of the aspects of this Timothy thing that I connect with. I remember being his age, and I remember some of the unique and specific challenges of being young in ministry. But this is one of the things I draw from this thing that Paul wrote to Timothy, do the work of an evangelist. I draw a conclusion from that, and it's theoretical, but see what you think. I don't think Timothy had the gift of evangelism. If he had, I think Paul would have used other words, but he said, do the work of an evangelist. Have you noticed that the things that you're gifted for don't very often, or certainly don't always, seem like work? But for things you're not gifted at, you must apply yourself to them as if they were work. And I think that's what he's saying to Timothy. Timothy, God has not given you the spiritual gift of evangelism, so you're going to have to do the work of an evangelist. Believe it or not, I have more ideas on that, and I'm going to come back to it next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.